Okay. Now you can hear me. All right, great. So when we talk about the living world, when we talk about the living organisms falling into some categories, that is due to their having a basic property called being living. And what I will not go into the philosophical aspect of life. I will just go into the scientific aspect that being living means that you have certain properties, and these properties connect all the living organisms together. So we will first talk about the most common things, and then later on we will talk about the things that come after. That means we will discuss the diversity in less detail, in great detail, successively. So there are some properties that are called the basic fundamental of all living organisms. All right, yeah. Scientists, please also report your attendance now that you can hear me. Yeah. Christocular Mission Satna and Shillong students, please report your attendance. Class has started. Okay. So there are 4 basic properties: growth, reproduction, metabolism, and consciousness. Okay. In the last class, I had taught you that when I talk about growth, that all living organisms show growth. Growth means basically increase in mass. Okay. In my last class, I had told you all this. You can check my last lecture also. That when we talk about growth, that means we are talking about the increase in mass of living organisms. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Shillong, 10 students. Testicular mission. Satna, please also, you also report your attendance. All centers, please report your attendance. Okay. All right. So growth is the basic property that normally we ascertain to all living organisms, that in general we say all living organisms can show growth. So what is growth? By definition, increase in mass. Do non-living organisms or non-living objects also show growth? Yes, they show growth. I gave you some examples also. And living organisms also show growth, but there is a difference between growth in living and non-living. The difference is, in living organisms, the growth is such that it is intrinsic in nature. It is due to increase in number of cells. Okay. But when we talk about growth in non-living objects, it is extrinsic property. It is extrinsic. That means something is added from the outside and it can be very easily lost also. Okay. So this means one more point comes after this, that growth in living organisms is irreversible, while growth in non-living objects is reversible. Right? So that right now you're in class 11th, even how much you want to, because little kids have all the fun in the life of everybody. So no matter how much you like kids and like being a kid, you cannot go back to that previous state, right? Nobody can. So that is what I mean by growth is irreversible. You cannot go back. However, growth in living organisms being irreversible also means the non-living objects are reversible growth, or in nature are having reversible growth. So their growth can always come back and can always go forward also in many directions. Okay, forward, backward, never ending cycle of mountains having snow deposit, snow melts in the summer, snow deposits in the winter, melting, depositing, this happens all over the time. So that is the case of non-living objects. Then we talk about reproduction. Reproduction means, does everybody remember the definition of reproduction? Everyone remembers the definition of reproduction? Reproduction means basically the property of a species is that it can freely interbreed within each other, within that species. A species is a group of individuals which can freely interbreed with one another. But what is the purpose of reproduction? Reproduction's purpose is to maintain the species, because no living organism can live forever. So what can we do? We can only do one thing. If all living organisms cannot live forever, they must reproduce. They must produce new organisms by cell division and then fertilization or asexual reproduction. So reproduction is of asexual sexual type. Reproduction is a process by which an organism of a species makes similar organisms or exactly similar organisms. So by exactly similar, I mean asexual. By similar organisms, I mean sexual reproduction. Okay. However, growth does not occur in all living organisms. Do you remember why? I gave you some examples. There might be multiple reasons why an organism is not able to reproduce, such as lower sperm count, other factors. Sterility of males can be the reason, sterility of females can be the reason. That is why we have, in human beings we have many fertility clinics, okay, for sterile human couples who cannot have a baby. So they might go for a test tube baby. That is also possible. So when test tube baby is formed outside the body, then it will be implanted back inside the mother's body after fertilization. So that is the case of test tube baby. Okay. All right. And other than that, there are some other things also. Reproduction can not occur in sterile human couples, worker honeybees, mules. I gave you many examples. Mules are sterile because males are sterile, females are fertile. Worker honeybees, they are sterile females because of parthenogenesis and other factors. But basically, they are sterile due to the reason being not parthenogenesis, but because they have been fed a different diet during larval development. When the larva was developing into the worker, it was given a nutrient deficient food. Different type of food causes different type of functional origin. So queen honeybee gets the richest food and worker honeybee gets the poorest quality food. That is the reason. So these examples I gave you. Then I gave you the relationship between growth and reproduction. Growth and reproduction are mutually intrinsic properties. Okay. That means when growth is happening, reproduction is also happening in case of unicellular organisms. In intrinsic by intrinsic I mean unicellular organisms. In multicellular organisms, it is extrinsic in nature. That means when growth is happening, reproduction will not happen, and when reproduction is happening, growth will not happen. Best example is you people. You had your maximum growth phase just before your puberty period. Then your height was increasing very rapidly. Okay, even your neighbors might become jealous. Like, what is happening? How are you increasing so fast in height? And my girl or my child is still not as tall as you are. And so people get jealous all the time. People get try to compare you all the time. So many fun things happen during that time, right? So reproduction, as soon as your puberty starts, you are trying to become your body is trying to mature your reproductive organs. Suddenly, your growth does not stop immediately, but it will ultimately stop by the time you reach the age of 19 or 20 years. Okay. So in human beings, or in case of multicellular organisms, growth and reproduction do not occur at the same time. When growth is happening, reproduction will not happen, and when reproduction is happening, growth will not happen. I also gave you an example that in case of sterile people, the people we see in our daily lives, okay, so who sing and dance and are sexually sterile, they do not have any sex organs, functional sex organs. They are always tall. You might never have seen a dwarf transgender people. Okay, so you might never have seen a dwarf transgender. They are normally very tall. Why? Because reproductive phase never comes in their life. Reproductive phase does not come in their life, so they are always very tall. Right? That is the reason. So growth, reproduction done, growth done. Third property is metabolism. Metabolism is a property in which, actually it's a defining property also. I told you what defining property is. Metabolism is the collective sum of all the chemical reactions occurring within the boundary of the cell membrane. Okay, metabolism is the collective sum of the metabolic reactions occurring within the boundary of the cell membrane. It is the sum total of all the reactions. Alright, so that is what metabolism is. It is of two types. It is of anabolism category, it is of catabolism category. Anabolism is constructive, catabolism is destructive reaction. Right? Now after metabolism, the fourth property is consciousness. So consciousness, when I talk about consciousness, what does consciousness mean? Consciousness means, how many people of you have seen Planet of the Apes? I told you in the last time also that how many people of you watch science fiction movies? Raise your hands. Nobody watches science fiction movies? Only action movies, I guess. In my case, I watch only Hollywood movies. I hardly watch any Bollywood movies. In the last 10 years, I don't think I have watched more than 2 or 3 Hindi movies. So yeah, I normally watch only science fiction or very interesting movies or anime only. So something must be interesting so that I can watch it. So the thing is, in these movies, you can see that the monkeys or some other organism or alien organism has become very, very conscious, very, very aware of his surroundings, and he can defend himself, he can protect his society. Okay, lot of things happen. So the basic thing is, consciousness is a property by which an organism is able to react to its surroundings, ability to react to its stimulus. Okay, you might not have seen science fiction movies, but I expect that you might have seen the trailer for Venom. Okay, everybody must have seen Tom Hardy's Spider-Man Spider-Man versus Venom. Yeah, or if you have not watched it, you might have watched just Venom, right? So Venom is a alien organism which can show consciousness. It can react to the stimulus. Okay, it can react towards its surrounding people, right? So if we reach Mars or we reach Moon, and if we find such an organism which is able to react to a stimulus, we will call it a living organism, because metabolism and consciousness both are living organism properties only. Growth and reproduction are not living organism properties. They are not defining properties. They are living organism properties in partial, because non-living can also show growth, but not all living organisms can show reproduction. But metabolism is there, it means it is living. Consciousness is there, it means it is living. Okay, so in your board exams you will face a lot of questions. In your NCERT descriptive last part, it is written what is a defining property, define whether metabolism is a defining property or not. So all these notes I have given you in the last class. Defining property has 2 conditions. First condition is it should be present in only living organisms. The second condition is there should be no exception. It should not be present in non-living objects, and there should be no exception. So living organisms show reproduction, but there is an exception. Sometimes they do not show this property. So reproduction does not become a defining property. Non-living objects show growth, so growth is not also a defining property. But besides that, metabolism and consciousness, they do not have any exceptions and found only in living organisms. So that is why we call it that metabolism and consciousness are defining properties. If you find any unknown biological material and it shows metabolism of itself, it shows consciousness of itself, it means it is living. Based on this, I also ask you questions about venom or any alien-like material you might encounter in outer space in the coming 100 years or more than that. Then I also asked you the question whether virus is living or non-living. You must answer on the basis of defining property. Is virus living or non-living? Does it show any defining property? Does it show growth? Yes. Does it show reproduction? Yes. Does it show metabolism? No. Does it show consciousness? No. So virus is not living. But we cannot call it strictly a non-living organism also. So virus is on the border of living and non-living. Alright? Because it takes over the metabolism of a host organism. It does not have any metabolism of itself. Alright? So virus is on the border of living and non-living. That is the answer to my question. Now after that, we must move on to the taxonomy part. Living world, we have completed the 4 properties connecting all living organisms together: growth, reproduction, metabolism, consciousness. Alright, so let's move on to first of all, we must discuss the diversity of living world. Diversity of living world. So when we talk about diversity, there are 1.7 million living organisms discovered till date. There are 1.7 to 1 million organisms discovered till date. Okay, somebody is asking me a question, but sir, viruses have proteins which must be synthesized in the body only. Not body, but cell. Virus, you can keep it like an inert substance somewhere. You can keep it in a bottle. You remember smallpox virus? Smallpox virus. Smallpox virus, it has been kept in Russia and USA in some top secret laboratories under minus 196 degrees centigrade, permanently frosted conditions. We do not want the virus to ever escape into the wild now. We want people to get healed, and it is eradicated from the world, but it is still kept there. And if you take it out, if some terrorist takes it out and spreads it among the people, we will have a worldwide epidemic of smallpox. Okay, so smallpox virus and other viruses, they are of this category. So the thing is, viruses do not have their own metabolism. They do not have ribosome, they do not have mitochondria. But if you put a virus inside a specific host cell, not any host cell, then only it can multiply. If you want to multiply it on a synthetic medium, give it RNA, give it DNA, give it proteins, everything, still it will not multiply. No matter how much nutrients you put, it cannot multiply. This means it does not have a metabolism of its own. If it had, then just like bacteria, it would have used the raw material to make its own body. But it does not have this property. So that means it is incapable of metabolism. Okay? 1.7 to 1.8 million organisms discovered till date. Out of these, 1.2 million are animals and 0.5 million are plants. .5 million are plants. Okay. So out of these organisms, 1.2 million are animals and 0.5 million are plants. So total is 1.7 to 1.8 million. Okay. So if you somebody asks you one number, then you will say 1.7, because 1.8 is still not complete. Okay. All right. So how do you study all these organisms? The question becomes, how do you study so much organisms? Look, for example, all the people that are sitting in your class, you might know their names. Okay. You might know their names. But what about the people of whole school? Do you know the names of each and every person in your school? Does anybody have a super memory that he has been able to remember each and every person's name in their own school? Anybody? Okay, yeah, I can see no hands up. So I guess nobody has a super memory like that. Nobody has. Very few people have this capability, and it's suited for a limited purpose only. It's better to be a genius to be a hardworking genius than just working on rote learning everything. So there are some people who can do that, but it's not a very useful talent. It's only for passing exams, nothing more than that. So my question is, you do not have the capability to learn each and every person's name, but we have a other capability. Whatever capability we don't have, we Indians especially have the ability to make up for it in some way. In fact, every human organism does, but Indians especially have this capability to make up for it in unique ways, right? So you might not know the name of each and every person, but you certainly know that he or she belongs to a specific category. We call these categories names, okay? Or sometimes we use very proper names that might sound like abuses, right? So we make these categories so that if we address this person by this category, any other person who hears this category can immediately recognize him and associate him with that category, right? We make it for our convenience. It might not be correct. It might be totally incorrect also, improper also, and to some people it might be rude also. But the thing is, it helps in identifying people in certain cases. Okay, we can use it for a lot of purposes. For example, if you have a lot of friends, and some people out of your friends are very happy, very easygoing, and they have a lot of money to waste also. Okay, so they might throw a lot of parties. So you know that if you need money and you fall short of some problem, getting punished for some problem, there are some people who can always help you out, right? So you call them useful people, and you know what these people are. They might be of junior classes also, they might be of senior classes also. Okay, a lot of things happen. So basically we categorize people. Similarly, scientists have a problem of categorizing 1.7 million organisms. All right. So how do we categorize it? We categorize it in a certain way that is called taxonomy. Aristotle was the first person who gave scientific classification system. After Aristotle, this credit is given generally to Linnaeus, who gave a two-kingdom system, and Linnaeus gave some rules of nomenclature. Okay, so to be able to study and understand all living organisms, we classify them into categories. And Linnaeus was the first person who suggested this way. These categories are called taxa. And Carolus Linnaeus is called father of taxonomy. Is called father of taxonomy, right? So Carolus Linnaeus is called father of taxonomy. Linnaeus gave 7 obligate categories called taxa. Linnaeus suggested 7 obligate categories called taxa. These are, now an easy way to learn this is by an acronym. Acronym means short form. King Philip cut open five green snakes. K is for kingdom, C is for, I'll write all these down. Philip or David. For plants, division is used. For animals, kingdom is used. K is for kingdom. P is for phylum. C is for class. O is for order. F is for family. G is for genus. S is for species. Right? So these are the 7 obligate categories called taxa. Now, yeah, please write it quickly. In case of plants, we use division instead of phylum. In case of plants, we use division instead of phylum. All right. So these are the 7 obligate categories. Okay. Now, the first part, okay, the first part of trying to identify an organism is called nomenclature and identification. Okay. So first of all, if you find an unknown organism, okay, students, you have any doubts regarding this? You can ask me directly. Any doubts regarding this? It's very easy. Linnaeus gave this system. Linnaeus is called father of taxonomy. Linnaeus gave a lot of rules for classifying the organisms, right? So I hope this is clear. Okay, so let's continue. The first step in taxonomy is identification and nomenclature. Identification comes first. You have to identify whether it is a different organism or not. The first step in taxonomy is identification and nomenclature. Nomenclature comes second. Okay. So we need to define the organism first, then we can do this and that. And the rules of nomenclature called binomial nomenclature were also given by Linnaeus. The rules of binomial nomenclature, which is a type of nomenclature, were given by Linnaeus. Right? Now there are some rules for it. Let's write them quickly. You might already know these rules. These rules are: The scientific name of each organism consists of two parts. Generic and specific epithet. Generic and specific epithet. So, example, Mangifera indica. Mangifera indica. This part is called the generic name or generic epithet. This part is the name of the species. This is the specific epithet. This is the specific epithet. Specific epithet means the name of the species together with the genus. Generic name means genus name. It is simple as that. Okay, so let's continue. Also, in the next rule, you will see how we write the scientific name. When the scientific name is written, it must be underlined. It must be underlined. However, when printing, it must be italicized. It must be italicized. It must be italicized. So italicized means it must be written with a angular inclination. Linnaeus used Latin language for naming organisms. All scientific names must be written in Latin language. All scientific names must be written in Latin language. Okay, so all scientific names must be written in Latin language. Can you suggest me a reason why Latin language was chosen? Can you give me a reason why Latin language must be chosen? Anyone? Just try to make a guess if you can't. If you are wrong, I'll correct you, right? So no need to worry about that. So what is the reason? Anyone? Why not any other language? Why not English language? English was the most widely spoken language at that time. So Linnaeus could have easily chosen English language, and then we would have not have to waste our times reading the name, learning the name, properties, etc. So name would have been very easy, right? So what is the reason? Okay. Linnaeus's actual name was Carl von Linné. After he applied binomial nomenclature to plants and animals, he changed his own name to binomial nomenclature. Now, binomial nomenclature form in Latin language it is called. He translated its own work. Okay, so Species Plantarum, Philosophy, Zoology, many books were written by Linnaeus, but he always used Carolus Linnaeus after that. It must be written in Latin language. All scientific names must be written in Latin language. Because, one more reason, very good, if anybody guessed it, because he is Latin. No. No. Everybody has listened to the song Despacito. Raise your hands if you have listened to Despacito. Is there anyone who hasn't? Okay. No Despacito lovers here. Okay. I'm surprised nobody is raising their hands. No, not because he's Latin. There is another reason. Shawn Michaels or anybody else. Latin is basically Spanish language. It's a form of Spanish language, but it is more refined, more grammatically correct. Spanish is very, let us say, a bit of a rude language. It has a very different grammar, very different syntax. But anyway, because Latin is a dead language, the reason is because Latin is a dead language. So because it is a dead language, so nobody will attempt to change the names of organisms that have already been named. Okay. All right. Regarding this now, let's move on. The name of author must be abbreviated and written without written in normal way, no underlining, no italicizing. Example, Mangifera indica Lin. Let me write you this name because this was asked in 2018 question. This is a 2018 question, NEET examination. The correct way of naming Mangifera indica is, in one case the baby even fell. Sorry, in one case there was a bit of a funny tragedy regarding this. Anyway, if you don't want to watch a lot of fiction TV or so much, no worry about that. It was related to Linnaeus. Anyway, Mangifera indica, this is in Latin, indica is in Latin. Linnaeus's own name is written, but it is written in short. If it's a scientist named Roxburgh was a scientist who discovered Pinus gerardiana or Chilgoza tree. So I'm not underlining Lin part. I'm not underlining the Lin part. Okay, I think I had already done this, but anyway, because it's a long time. Okay. So regarding this is binomial nomenclature, and please remember there are more categories than this. Okay. So if we want to use more than 7 categories, then it is okay. But each organism must have at least 7 categories. So this is obligate categories. Linnaeus said, that all categories must be obligate categories. All categories must be independent of each other. Must be independent. Okay, wait a second. Do you understand this statement? Let me emphasize this for you. All these categories are independent and dependent. It's just like a staircase. It's just like a staircase. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So this is the order of descending hierarchy. Descending hierarchy. This is ascending hierarchy. So if all the categories are used, all categories must be obligate categories. Okay. This is what Linear said. All categories must be obligate categories. So if you must use at least 7, and if you require more, you can make more. If more categories are required, then they might be added. If more categories are required, they might be added. Okay. All right. So it's nearly 5 o'clock. Yeah. So you might take a 5-minute break now. Please try to return quickly, and then we'll finish the artificial system, the natural system of classification, the phylogenetic system. So then, please come quickly. Okay. Take a 5-minute break up till then, because it's 5 o'clock. I'll give you a 5-minute break. Okay, so we are back. Yeah, so I told you that all the categories must be, they are all obligate categories. Okay, so if more categories are required, they might be added. For classification of human beings, for classification of apes, for example, we might use even 9, 10 categories. Many categories are there. Sub-tribe are there, subspecies are there, sub-family are there. So the categories might increase to 10 or in some cases even 11, 12. Okay, but minimum of 7 categories will be used. Okay, so that is the thing. After this, we might move on to all categories must be, yeah, okay, this is over now. Now we must consider some systems of classification. Some systems of classification we must consider now. Look, Linnaeus was a genius in that he gave some rules for classification. But Linnaeus did not give a very satisfactory system of classification for living organisms. He classified everything into 2 kingdoms, plant and animal. No more kingdoms, only plant and animal kingdom. And we know that some organisms, now we know that are 5 kingdoms or even 6 kingdoms. But Linnaeus gave only 2 kingdoms. And in plants, he used a criteria that all plants having a single stamen belong to one category, and all plants must be classified into 24 categories only, based on number of stamens, just one character. Suppose, this is just like saying, suppose somebody is wearing some specs or goggles, spectacles, you might call them a genius. That is not always true. Not all geniuses wear specs, right? So it's a general notion that if somebody is wearing specs, they might be very studious, but that has nothing to do with it. A weak eyesight is not necessarily related to studies, right? So that is a totally different thing. So it's just like saying that we use only one criteria to classify so many people. Just like Linnaeus used one criteria to classify all different types of plants into 24 categories. So this type of classification system in which we use limited number of characters to classify organisms is called artificial system of classification. Now we need to write about these things also. Artificial system of classification. Artificial system of classification. A classification system in which limited number of characters or very few characters are used is artificial system of classification. Artificial system of classification. Is artificial system of classification. Example, Linnaeus. Linnaeus's system of classification called Linnaean system of classification. Linnaean system of classification is artificial. Linnaean system of classification All right. Okay. So after this, we have after the linear system of classification, we have natural system of classification. We have natural system of classification. A classification system which uses multiple criteria for classifying organisms is called natural system of classification. Natural system of classification. Okay, it's called natural system of classification. So there are many other systems, like example, Engler and Prentice's system, Engler and Prentice's system, and Bentham and Hooker's system. Bentham and Hooker's system of classification. Okay, so these are two classification systems. Okay, these are natural systems of classification. But these days we do not use artificial, we do not use a natural system of classification, we use phylogenetic system of classification. Phylogenetic system of classification. Yeah, okay, sure. I'll scroll back. Bentham and Hooker's system, Engler and Prantl system. I'm writing these a bit fast because we have to cover a lot of things. Okay, done. So what is phylogenetic system? Phylogenetic system of classification is based on the phylogeny. Phylogeny means evolutionary classification. Everybody knows how a tree undergoes branching. The branches forming upwards, right? Acropetal succession it is called. So similarly, it is believed that all living organisms have diversified from very primitive organisms called archaebacteria. Then came bacteria. Then came eukaryotes. So from prokaryotes, eukaryotes have developed, and eukaryotes have undergone complexification. Complexification has happened, and they have diversified into very complex categories. Okay, they have classified. They have diversified into very complex categories. Okay, so regarding this, let us study about the phylogenetic system. This is the most widely accepted system. According to this, all organisms must be classified on the basis of evolution. Okay, so it's basically dependent upon which organism gave birth to which and next. Okay. All right. So this is the most modern system of classification. The present system of classifications are basically phylogenetic system. Present day system is phylogenetic system of classification. There are many phylogeneticists like Takhtajan, Hutchinson. Many people are there who advocated this system of classification, and this is the most modern system of classification. After this, let's come on quickly to taxonomic aids. Classification systems we have finished. Now we have to do taxonomic aids. Taxonomic aids. So what are taxonomic aids? These help in taxonomy. Okay. Simply I am writing the basis, the function of taxonomical aids, sorry. So what are these taxonomical aids? There are 4 we have to study. Botanical garden, herbarium, zoological garden, museum, and key. Botanical garden, So how many people of you have visited a botanical garden? Nobody? Okay. A botanical garden is a place for ex situ and in situ conservation of plants. Basically, we do not want it in situ. We usually consider it ex situ. We want plants to be conserved outside of their natural habitats at some place else, and proper environmental conditions are provided to the plant to be able to grow. For example, if I want to grow some orchids which grow in Sikkim, which grow in northeast parts, I can grow these orchids, but I will have to provide an air-conditioned environment with specific humidity level, specific low temperature level. Then only that orchid will grow in Delhi or in Lucknow or in Kolkata, because these are the places where some botanical gardens exist, right? So unless and until I give these conditions, such plants will not be able to grow. This is the important thing. So a botanical garden provides near natural habitats to some plants which are not actually found there. This is called ex situ conservation. Okay. A botanical garden is a place. Botanical garden is a place for ex situ conservation of plants. Alright. So what are the famous botanical gardens in the world? Largest botanical garden in the world with maximum number of species in the world is Kew Botanical Garden. Largest botanical garden in world is Royal Botanical Garden. Royal Botanical Garden, Kew, England. Okay. Largest botanical garden in India. Largest botanical garden in India. What is the largest botanical garden in India? Anyone? Indian Botanical Garden, Kolkata. Indian Botanical Garden, Kolkata. Indian Botanical Garden, Kolkata. Okay. So the thing is, in this botanical garden, there is a 300-400-year-old banyan tree. It is called the Great Indian Banyan Tree. It is 300 to 400 years old. So you can write one more thing here. Largest banyan tree in Asia. Largest banyan tree in Asia or India perhaps is Great Indian Banyan Tree at Indian Botanical Garden. It is so huge that to take a whole round of this tree, it takes about 3.5 to 4 kilometers. 3.5 to 4 kilometers, it looks like a small jungle, right? So yeah, if you search for these images on Google, Great Indian Banyan Tree, you will get these images that you will, it will look like a large jungle of trees. Actually, those are prop roots coming out from the banyan tree. Banyan tree has large branches and it shows prop roots, right? So it will cover a huge area. It will look like a small forest. Great Indian Banyan Tree. At Indian Botanical Garden. At Indian Botanical Garden. Okay. There are some other botanical gardens which are commonly asked. Other botanical gardens. Write them quickly. Other botanical gardens. They are. One is very famous. It is National Botanical Research Institute, NBRI. National Botanical Research Institute. NBRI, Lucknow. Okay. Then another is Lloyd Botanical Garden, Darjeeling. All right. Okay, yeah. I'll scroll back a bit. Yeah. Okay, these are the botanical gardens. There are some other botanical gardens also. Kemjing Lanjao Botanical Garden, Sikkim. It's the only floating botanical garden in the world. And it's one of a kind because it has butterfly sanctuary. Actually, there is not any other sanctuary which can be called purely a butterfly sanctuary. But Kemjing Langjao Botanical Park or sanctuary is such type, and it's also a floating sanctuary or a botanical garden. But there are some issues related to that, but just try to remember. In the chapter biodiversity in class 12th, you will learn about these things in detail. What's a sanctuary, what's a botanical garden, what's a national park, things like this, okay? Second thing is zoological park. Sorry, more before that, herbarium. So everybody must have prepared some specimens like dried flowers, dried leaves in their books, right? So the thing is, herbarium is made in a similar fashion. A herbaria is a collection of dried plant specimens, dried and preserved plant specimens. We usually use a very strong poison or toxin called Hg2Cl2 to preserve these specimens. Okay? Please write this. Herbarium is a collection of dried and preserved plant specimens. Dried and preserved plant specimens from around the world. Okay. This is a collection of dried and preserved plant specimens from around the world. And largest herbarium in the world is Royal Botanical Garden. Largest herbarium in the world is Royal Botanical Garden. Royal Botanical Garden, Kew, England. It has about 6 million specimens. 6 million specimens in Royal Botanical Garden. In Indian Botanical Garden, there are only 1 million specimens. Largest herbarium in India. Largest herbarium in India is Indian Botanical Garden, Kolkata. Indian Botanical Garden, Kolkata. Moving on, the third thing we have to do, zoological park or zoo. So please tell me, what is a zoo and what is the function of a zoo? What is a zoo and what is the function of a zoo? What is a zoo and what is the function of a zoo? A zoo is a ex situ is a method of animals are kept safe. Yeah, right. It's a place for recreation and conservation of animals. A zoo is a place for recreation. Recreation activities means you want to go to a zoo because you want to see the animals. So it gives us great pleasure to see animals being kept captive and humans running safe, right? Okay, so it's a place for recreation, and ex situ conservation of animals. Conservation of animals. The animals are kept in their near natural habitat. We try to keep them in their near natural habitat and provide them a safe space also. We can also see them, and it helps in a lot of ways. If you want to, suppose you suppose there is a new species of tiger discovered somewhere. Suppose there is a new species of tiger discovered somewhere, then what will happen? There are many species of tigers already. Indian tiger, Sundarban tiger, or the Royal Bengal tiger, same thing. Then the Javan tiger, Sumatran tiger, golden tiger, Siberian tiger, Indian white tiger. Okay, lots of species of tigers exist. Okay, I think the Sumatran tiger had become extinct recently. But suppose if a new species of tiger is discovered, then where will you go to see a tiger? You must actually compare it. It is called identification. You must compare it to see that this tiger is different from the other existing species of tiger. So you will not go to a national park. Why? Because you need to note down some characteristics. You need to compare the characteristics. So if you go to a national park to take the interview of a tiger, he will not be very pleased. You understand what I'm saying, right? He will not be very pleased that you are trying to take an interview. He will straight away attack or eat also, if he is supposed to be a man-eater. So that's not a nice thing. So we need to keep the tiger captive and see him from close range to be able to observe his characters in person. So that is why we call zoo as a taxonomical aid, but a national park or a sanctuary is not called a taxonomical aid. Only zoo is called. Okay, or botanical garden or herbarium is called, or museum is called. But other than that, we do not call sanctuaries or national parks like taxonomical aids. They are not. It's a place for where you can quickly go to see an animal. Conservation of animals. All right. Largest zoo in the world. Largest zoo in world is? Anybody? Kruger National Park, South Africa. It's called a national park, but it's very huge. It's actually a zoo. Kruger National Park, South Africa. Kruger National Park, South Africa. It's very large. In India, there are various zoos. The Delhi Zoo, Mumbai Zoo, but these are comparatively smaller compared to the African zoos. African zoos have a lot of space. In India, we have to keep the animals in lesser quantity of space, so our zoos are comparatively smaller. But nevertheless, we know that we have a lot of zoos as well as national park sanctuaries. Number 4, museum. So what is a museum? A museum is a place where the dried, preserved, just like plant specimens were kept in herbarium, we will keep the dried, preserved animal specimens in the museum. It is a place where dried, preserved animal specimens are kept okay. So we don't need to write much details about the museum. Okay. Also, we also keep fossils in the museum, plant and animal fossils of bacteria, of fungi, of plants and animal kingdom. All fossils basically are kept in museum only. Also, fossils are kept in museum. For example, dinosaur eggs or mummies. Mummies are nearly not exactly a fossil. It's actually artificially preserved, but we keep that also kept in museum. All right. Largest museum in the world is? Largest museum in the world is? Anybody? What is the largest museum in the world? British National Museum. British Museum, United Kingdom. British Museum, UK. This is also the place where Tutankhamun's great treasure, it has been kept here. The Tutankhamun, you must remember, he was a great pharaoh, and actually in Egypt there were a lot of pyramids and a lot of mummies who had a lot of treasure, but it was looted by people. People looted a lot of treasures, so not much treasures remained, but Tutankhamun's treasure and his tomb remained unspoiled, and it had a curse upon it: whoever opens it shall die within 1 week. And it happened also. 2 British explorers who opened it, they all died within 1 week. That's a mystery how they died. One died of malaria, other died of some other natural causes, but they both died. And his half treasure is kept in Cairo Museum, Egypt, and other half is kept in British Museum. And even India's Kohinoor diamond, it is kept in British Museum, right? So it's a very large museum. Okay, the last thing is key. The last thing is key. Key is an analytical tool. It is an analytical tool consisting of contrasting pair of statements called couplets. Okay. In Hindi, we call couplet as doha. In Hindi, we call couplet as doha. But here, couplet means not a poetry verse. It's doha is a verse of poetry. Couplet means a pair of contrasting statements used to compare two species. So suppose statement 1 says, we want to compare two species, so we will only compare two people by their differences, not their similarities. So statement 1, statement 2, sorry, I just wrote statement 1 and statement 2. Plant A has red flowers. Plant B has white flowers. Okay. So this is called a couplet. And each statement, it is given a different name. There are different types of keys also. But these are two contrasting pair of statements and it represents a type of key. We do not need to write much details. You will be only asked what is a key and what is it used for. It is used for taxonomy, and we bring out the differences between species and we learn to classify them. So we will write keys are of two types. Keys are of two types. One is bracketed key. Other is an indented key. All right. One is the bracketed key, other is the indented key. This is the end of this chapter. Now please put the heading for next chapter. I'm only giving you an introduction of the next chapter. I will start it properly in the next class. But please give a heading, and your next chapter is biological classification. Biological classification. So in this chapter, we will properly learn what classification is all about. The first system of classification was given by Aristotle. Aristotle said that all organisms can be either plants or animals. All organisms are either plants or animals. Okay. So according to Aristotle, all organisms are either plants or animals. And plants are classified into three groups: herbs, shrubs, and trees. Animals are classified into Anaima and Enaima. Okay. Aristotle's attempt at classification is considered to be the first scientific system of classification. Now you must ask me, what is scientific system of classification? Look, scientific system of classification means that you choose a criteria, and that criteria is not based upon whether that thing is useful to you or harmful to you. You just choose a neutral criteria to classify organisms. This is called scientific basis of classification. Okay. So before Aristotle, some people used the terms like useful plants, harmful plants, poisonous plants, non-poisonous plants, poisonous animals, non-poisonous animals, criteria like this. So that criteria was not very useful, right? But Aristotle was the first person who attempted a scientific classification. His system is not used. One more thing, what is a herb? A herb is a plant which has soft stem, which can be easily bended. Shrub. Everybody has seen a rose plant. So rose plant, when it grows older, it develops a stem which is having woody character, but it does not grow into a large tree, right? So herb is a plant with soft stem, shrub is a plant with woody stem, and tree is a large plant with a continuous expansion, okay? And it grows very fast, and it has a large expansion of its stem. So large woody plants are called trees, small woody plants are called shrubs, and very small non-woody soft herbaceous plants are called herbs, right? Anaema, enaema. Animals which have red blood, anaema, which do not have red blood, enaema. So things like this go on. So please quickly write. Aristotle was the first person. Aristotle system was the first. Aristotle's system of classification was first scientific attempt at classification. Was first scientific attempt at classification. After Aristotle came Linnaeus, gave two-kingdom system of classification. Then came Haeckel, Copeland, and the final system of classification is Whittaker's system, five-kingdom system of classification. Now that I will teach you in the next class, but I'm giving you a bit of homework. It's not, don't take it too heavily. I understand that you are class 11 students and there is a lot of work. Okay, in class 11th, there is a heavy workload on all students. I totally understand your pain. I have been through that phase and I'm out of it. So I understand how much hard it is. So if you have time, please look forward to the Whittaker's criteria of classifying five kingdoms. Okay, I will teach you this in the next class. No worries about that. But if you can, it will be very helpful. Actually, it's a most common question in the board exams. Okay, so that I will take in the next class, and we will actually take these kingdoms, all these five kingdoms, one by one. Okay, so this was the revision part. I had to cover a part of my first class also because there has been a large gap, so I had to do it in this class. So I hope you have revised this also, and you will be ready for the next class, which is a very typical part for your board exams and as well as for your NEET exams. It's very important, biological classification. Okay, so I have done the elementary part, so don't worry, this was a bit boring. The next classes will be very interesting. I will come with the PPTs and images to show the organisms, what they do, and how they are classified. Lots of things remain. So please try to go through this. This part does not carry much weightage, but the next part will definitely carry a lot of weightage. Okay. So thank you, students. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your time. So go back home safely. It's dark now. I can see your classes are dark now. All right. So sun sets early these days. Thank you. Thank you.